Hey, welcome to an episode of Ehkili, Afikra's Book Talk. I'm really excited for this episode. Today on the series, we have My Brother, My Land, a story from Palestine. The authors are Sami Hermez and Sireen Sawalha. Welcome to Afikra.
Thank you.
Maybe, Sami, let's start with you just for a second. Tell me, I heard in an episode, a different talk that you were given, that this book was sort of like 20 years in the making. Walk me through where you were 20 years ago and why that started.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you, Mikey, for having us on and inviting us to this episode, this show. So yeah, 20 years ago, I was a graduate student at Princeton University, and I was starting at Princeton. I think it was my first year, and I was doing a short ethnography project for a class, actually, and that's how I met Sireen, for a class project, first year graduate student. We met. I was trying to learn a little bit about the Arab American community or the Palestinian community in the area, and she was living there with her family. She had 3 kids at the time, and we sat down to talk, and she started telling me about her life in Palestine, about her brother, about the way she lived. And she was just this amazing storyteller. Just really knew how to tell a good story, to give you all the sort of my smallest details, and had an amazing memory. And so I told her, I was like, listen, we need to, write this story, write down, your story and your life. And it's how we began. There's a lot more to say. I felt like, her story, as you'll come to read in the book, is a story of a family who were farmers in a small village in the outskirts of Jenin. And so you get this a very different story than one that is often told about Palestine.
I love it. You're like, Sireen, in 2024, we need to publish a book.
Yeah. Well, that was not the intention.
That was a pitch. Sireen, 2024, mark your calendar. We need this book to come out.
Especially in the right political time, like
exactly
with what happened 23, the end of.
But I don't think get Sireen started on how long this took me, and you can ask her that question.
Sireen, I'm curious about you. Like, so maybe if you can just set the scene. Many people listening to this will not have the book when they first hear this. Hopefully they'll go out and get it and listen and comment and let us know what they think. And give us a sense of sort of the broad strokes of your family. Why did you agree to sharing your family story in such an intimate way with the world?
Okay, hi Mike. Thanks for you and all your audience ahead of time. I think every Palestinian family could write a book. We live through a lot of struggles and so many details. The rest of the world doesn't know anything about us. And I think moving to the United States in 1990 it hurts me when people ask me, where are you from? I moved and I live in New York City right away, and I got a job in the city, and I have to explain to the people. And whenever I say Palestine, it's like, people, we don't exist in the Western media, in the Western history, culture. So I kept sharing, like, who's the Palestinian, who we are. Like, I felt like I needed people to know our daily life. The idea of the book, I think it came from Sami first, but me, like Sami said, I always keep telling the people who we are, the stories, the little details, because as much as you see in the media, even the Arab media does not explain the daily routine life for a small Palestinian villages. My family is a big family. My dad is the only child from his mom and dad, but he has other siblings from previous marriage for both mom and dad. And then he lived away from us for a long time, and he always come in from the Gulf in the summer. And I kept thinking all my life that our story is unique because each one of us, the occupation impacted in a different certain way as for this one household, one family. And then I always a big fan of my mom, which is she was able to keep the land and the kids and the family and educate all of us. And we were great in schools, and later on everybody went their own path. So it's worth to read, it's worth to know the story. In the same time, it's not the land and the education and the struggle she faced, is how each child chose their path. So we work in international, some in the US, in Moscow, Saudi Arabia, and Dubai, and Jordan. Like we are all around the Arab country and outside. And it's American or European or a lot of stories. It's talk about people living in the city in Palestine. Either it's about Ramallah or Jerusalem stories, but you rarely see a small village. If you look at the map, I think Kufra is not even mentioned in any map. But it's a small village. A lot of time people ask me where, when, and the family, because the root of the family is not from Kufra. So I get a lot of questions, even for Palestinian people or people in Arab country who ask me, where is that?
So, Sireen, I have a question for you, right? And I apologize in advance for bringing myself into this question, but I will just to illustrate the magnitude of the decision that I'm going to ask about. So when I moved back to Beirut in 2016, I moved back from New York. I grew up in the Middle East. I grew up in Lebanon and Cyprus, and moved back in 2016. And I could walk 10 meters without somebody saying, "Menta majnoon? ليش رجعت على لبنان? What's wrong with you?" Right? وهلا even more so, right? Even when people, after the crisis and after the explosion and after a million things, the first question people get are, "بعدك هون? What are you doing?" Right? And this idea of going عكس السير, and forcing, saying, I want to stay, for me seems to be a question I get asked all the time. But in the book, you tell a very similar story, and both of you tell a very similar story about a decision to go, this idea of going backward, going عكس السير, going after 1967, going back. Can you explain if you thought that was a crazy decision growing up? Like why? Did you think that was a crazy decision? Did you think it was a heroic decision? What did you think?
So listen, when we were young, parents tell us all these stories about their accomplishments.
Maybe tell the story, if you can tell the story as well.
So for us, I'm growing up with my mom. Every time she reminds us, how did she walk back from Jordan? She reminds us with little details. Like, for example, Suzanne always, until she's grown up, she graved the pita bread with the tomato homemade paste. So the tomato, they used to cultivate in the season and then squeeze it and then cook it in a slow fire for hours and hours and add the salt and the olive oil and then preserve it in a fridge في السدة and the shelf for a year and use it. So for her to eat that, even little details, it's memory in my head. For my mom, I think people lived 1948. The experience of the people who lived for 1948, the experience of Palestinian people who living in refugee camp in Lebanon and Syria and Jordan, and carrying that key to their home, because that key is a symbol for العودة. My mom, listening to all these stories, she doesn't want to be that person. She was 21 years old? I think Sami is right. We said 21 years or 20 years. My mom was 21 years. Yeah. Coming back with 3 girls. And the 3 girls is like Suzanne is 1961, my son 1964. I'm 1966 born. Like I'm the youngest was in her hand. And I think all she thought about is the land, the home, and she will be homesick for her family. Okay, she has 5 sisters and 5 brothers. She has a big family. But for her, she's always proud of coming back. She never regretted, and she always tell us the story of coming back. Okay. For me, I was a 1-year-old, but I knew so much details about that story that a lot of people said, why you wrote about it? You were a year old, because of how much mom kept telling us the story. She never regretted coming back until later in life, and you're going to see it in the book. When you start losing a lot of hope and losing member of your family and losing the house you came back to, you start regretting. I wish, she said it once to in front of me, I wish اليهود مسكوني ورجعوني على عمان. يعني this is, I wish the Israeli soldiers caught me and sent me back to Amman and never crossed. And that's the only time wished. But yeah, keep telling us the story. It's Majnun, yeah, it's a crazy idea, but especially she has to raise us without my father, who come every summer only. And you said it, going back from New York. A lot of time people says to me the same thing, like, I wish I can go back. You raise 3 children in the US and you start at, your roots start growing in the US and you start being attached to your own children and you don't want to go back to there. But I go back whenever I can. Like, I want to go every summer. And with the situation, what's happening is there. I wanted to go back. And my dream is to go back like you and establish something. But the idea of going back for my mom, عشان الأرض. Like she always says, عشان الأرض, for the land, for the land. And ما بدي أكون لاجئة. I don't want to be a refugee. I want to have my house. And for a young woman, she did not think of it twice, I think. It's just seeing what happened in 1948 it's break every Palestinian heart. And for me, it's the best thing she did. She came back. That's the story.
Yeah.
Best thing is to be living there, to go through what we went. Because I cannot imagine myself growing up in Amman or in one of the refugee camps somewhere, or even in the Gulf, because I'm sure automatically she was going to join my father in Abu Dhabi. That I would not be myself if she did that. So Laudi for us, it impacted all our life. It made our life like a different history book to be written. And then, yes, it's 20 years, but it's imagine meeting Sami, recording, keep telling him the editing, and he got married, he graduated, he got married, he moved to Lebanon for a little bit, and again another oude for him, and met his wife there, and then starting a family. So there is many stages in his life. Like, I'm the wake-up call. I'm the wake-up call. I was the annoying person who kept calling Sami. When? What's next? I will leave him few months, and then I will be texting and messaging and calling and asking, what happened to the book? Can we meet? I'm going to Palestine this summer. Can you come? So he came to Palestine a couple of times. We met in Amman, Jordan. He came even in the US, and we met so many times in different parts of the country. Like, wherever he is in, I will drive and go and meet him. So it was not an easy process for him, getting a job and starting a family and at the same time writing a book. For me, I'm just like, I want it out. I want it out as fast as it can. But subhanallah, yani it's God will. It has to come in this time of our
Amazing.
both of our life. Yeah.
You know, if I can say a few words on both those things, on
Yeah.
the return and also on the length. I think the book shaped my life as well. You know, when you're working on something for 20 years, even if it's, you know, on and off, but it shaped. I think it shapes who I am and my commitments and attachments to Palestine, through, you know, just also working on this book. You know, you raised you asked an interesting question, made a great point, Mikey, with sort of your return. I hadn't really thought of that. These returns to conflict zones, right? Like places that people are inevitably going to ask you, why are you doing that? I think they're not always, they're very rational decisions in our minds, in your mind, in her mother's mind. But it's not something that, like, even me as the researcher, if I were to ask her mom, why did she return? There's no good answer, right? Because, you know, it is what it is. It's just the decisions made in the moment, because, as Sireen was saying, you don't want to be a refugee, and you know what that's like, and you've seen what that's like. But I think I struggled with that also in writing the book, right? There's a lot of moments. Also, for example, why does her brother, uh, you know, join the resistance? Why does he resist, and how does he commit to that kind of resistance for so long? What makes someone do that, right? And I've been active all my life. I've been in parts of movements and whatnot. I can't really tell you what it is. I mean, there's no great answer. There are many, many things. There's also life trajectories and whatnot. And so some of these questions are really hard to answer and therefore very difficult to represent on a page.
Yeah. Sami, I want to like interrogate this idea a little bit more, because there's also a question of like, why did you write this book, right? What were you personally sort of unpacking and interrogating and disentangling? Because you have your own story to tell, and you have a platform as well to tell sort of more sober analysis through academic work and research, as well. I mean, through the book, you're intertwining oral history and memoir, and then also trying to add some historical context onto the sort of skeleton. But as I was like prepping for this, I was wondering, I was like, why did Sami do this? You know, why did you not let the monkey slide off your back, or so to speak? Why didn't you say, خلاص, great idea, but you've heard hundreds of stories, thousands of stories that are meaningful. للأسف, there's so many stories.
I hope he doesn't say that because Sireen is annoying and nags so much. Go on.
You know, it, I wonder about this sometimes, and now that the book is out, I'm not sure how it's out, in the sense that I don't I don't know if I can do it again. Like now I'm thinking of a new project. I'm thinking, I don't know, how did one put this together? The it's also difficult, over 20 years. What was the motivation in 2005 versus what was the motivation in 2010 and 2015 and 2017? I think at different stages of my life, the motivations were different. They were, they changed, they transformed. It's never one thing that keeps you going. I know, and I still remember, for me, one of the things that made me want to tell this story, there's a number of things, but so one thing is obviously also the way that Sireen was so good at telling it. I mean, she provides a lot of the content for this, and it was in a sense an exciting story for people to read. And I was also motivated by wanting to tell a story that will move people to act, not just move people, but move people to act. And this is why I didn't opt for an academic style of writing and try to, besides the fact that Sireen would have been like, "What are you doing?" But also I didn't, even when I took this on, I told her, and back in 2005, we'll write this as a story. This is not an academic book. But I also was wanting to tell the story initially of her brother. And I wanted to be able to tell the life story of someone who was not just your average resistance fighter, but a resistance fighter that many people, especially in the West, because this was going to ultimately be written in English, and so it was going to be for an American, mostly American audience, because I was thinking of an American press. And so I wanted people to read the life story of someone that the media does not write positively for, various reasons, some obvious reasons or whatnot. But to just be able to tell that life.
Yeah.
And that life is like my life, like your life, like, every, we each have our lives and we each have our decisions, and it's not about, um, this is some sort of good or evil life. It's the life, and I wanted to be able to tell that. But that also changed because the more I, spoke to Sireen, there was also the life of the village and the whole family's life that gets intertwined with also her brother's life, so that it becomes bigger than just her brother.
Yeah. Um, in prepping for this, I couldn't help. I mean, for readers, if you haven't figured out, maybe just let me give a little information. So, one of the main plot points, or sort of the characters in the book, is your brother Iyad, who becomes part of the armed resistance, and decides that this is a decision point, right? This is in line with his values, and maybe it might not be a decision that other people make on a specific XY axis of their rationality, but there's another dimension that he's taking into account, and on that dimension, this is something that he wants to do.
Yeah.
And I think the book does a good job of humanizing. But I couldn't stop thinking of, in the last few months, there was that there was that video of the young Palestinian man who was like releasing this like old Israeli woman hostage, and they were like hugging and kissing bil Ehkili.
Yeah.
And then there's stories of the like, oh, we bonded over our love from Messi. Like, I'm Argentinian and he loves Argentina and that's his favorite team. And so it made me think how little humanity we have for these young men. We really don't know them. We don't get to know them.
So there, this one thing that I want to say, and I wanted to sort of resist this language of humanity. Actually,
Tell me why.
In not just also telling the story, but even in the sort of blurb of the book, and in talking about the book, we're all already human, all of us, right? Us and them, resistance soldier, we're all human. And I think for me, it wasn't about wanting to recognize any humanity or anything like that. For me, it was about wanting to tell the life, right? And that we all have different lives and different choices, and there's people resisting settler colonialism and apartheid, and it gets messy. And people have different ideas of how to do that, and it is what it is. And sometimes it's problematic, and sometimes I may agree, I may not. But at the end of the day, these are people who had childhoods, who grew up, who had great times, who laughed together, who did all kinds of things. And it's hard to say it any other way. And I do want to resist that idea of somehow that I, as a writer, or Sireen as the storyteller, that we're somehow giving someone their humanity, right? That it exists outside of them. But it actually it's part of who they are.
Yeah.
I was going to add something about, like, when you said about the soldiers and the young woman was released. Iyad was the third boy. I'm the third girl. So it's funny, we're a big family, but like every girl, it's similar to another boy in the family. So Yusuf and Suzanne, literally similar. Maysoon and Ihab. And then I came, me the third girl, he's the third boy. I walked in the street in certain towns, not in Kufr Rai, and people will ask me a couple of times, excuse me, are you related to Iyad Sawalha? Like, literally, people will stop me. The same olive skin, the same green eyes, the same curly hair, the same talk and laugh. Like, this is how much people see him, because he has so big heart and kind. And he is a person, wherever he is there, he has a present. Everybody know him, and he has a great relationship with everybody who was in prison. That the first scene in the book, when Sami read about my visit to the prison, first time I'm sitting with him after, in 1999. He's talking about 8 years he's been in prison, and this is the first time I'm sitting with him. That the Israeli soldiers who's there, he has a great relationship with her. She's back and forth from the cantir, they call it the cantir, the small store for prisoner store. Every drink, every snacks, he ordered for my children. So when they come into the visit, they have all that food. And she kept back and forth. Like, he ordered whatever allowance he has, 5, 6 different drinks, cake, cookies, chocolate. And she's back and forth. And I could see the smile and the connection. She has kind of respect and caring for him personally. And they do connection. I'm sure they do connection. It's not everybody there is the way maybe we'll talk about it, or other prisoners. Every prisoner has their own experience. But for example, I talk about first 17 years of interrogation for Iyad. His experience was one of the worst. Iyad told me I signed for over sentence they gave me, which is 215 years in prison, because I wanted to sleep. That's how he was
Wait,
tortured.
Sireen, say that sentence again. Hold on. So
he was,
walk me through the interrogation and what
he was arrested.
Tell me more about that.
He was arrested, and I get a phone call from my family. I was in the UN working that time, and they said Iyad was arrested. We don't know anything about him. And historically proven before, they get arrested, they disappear, 2-3 days, a body thrown in this village or in that street. So we thought like they killed him and he's somewhere in somehow. So I was able to contact the Amnesty International, Red Cross, looking for Iyad. Where is he? And then he was in interrogation for 17 days. 17 days, according to him, did not sleep, did not eat, did not relax, standing up, laying down, loud music. I remember one thing he said, laying down and a drop of water coming to the forehead every few seconds, and how annoying was. Like, he described so many things. And then in the end, I'm trying to listen his sentence. So I'm looking for a lawyer to take his case. And he got 215 years in prison. And the lawyer told me, can you bring his file? And here I am, 1,200-page file. I'm making copies in Beit El, the military headquarters for court. And then I'm saying, what did you do? This much paper. He's like, I was under a lot of tortures. All I wanted to sleep. So he signed whatever they told him to sign. If they told him that time you killed Sharon, he would say yes. You shot Shimon Peres, he would say yes. That's how bad he was. So he wanted to sleep. So he signed whatever they wrote in that file. And he got 215 years in prison. That's his sentence. And Israeli government or military court, I went to one of his court. It's like the small shack room with a military judge, who his judge was, I forgot what's his name, but he lost his legs in Lebanon, in the war in Lebanon a few years ago. So he was in a wheelchair when I went to that court, because every 6 months he's in a court with a different person. And when he walked in, his hand and feet, I mean, I did not see him for many years. He was refused even to be me close even to him and try to talk to him or hug him or touch him. And then he sat there for a few seconds, and then it was postponed for another 6 months, and he left. Me and my mom, the only people were in the court. So I always wonder how is his life, how he was tortured. So for a 17 years old to say, I will write and sign whatever you want. Can I sleep? Not meal, not to sit, just how much he was tired, he wants to sleep. And that's the experience of all the prisoners in the Israeli prisons, especially the young or the old. They go through a lot of stages in prison that in the end, they just want to sleep or want to eat a meal, or they want to connect with their family, or they want to take a shower, or maybe they just want a prayer mat to sit and read the Quran and pray. And that's something Iyad learned in prison, the Quran. Iyad was really memorized the whole Quran. And it's not just memorizing the Quran. He became really very educated in the translation and the meaning of the Quran. when he came out, I have so many notes from him. And when I visit him, he asked me for many other scholars' book and translation for the Quran, if I can bring it to him. So it changed his life politically and religiously, that he became praying 5 times a day, a scholar in translation of and the meaning of the Quran, and in political views. Like, I was shocked. I saw a different person from the one I left in 1990, last time I saw Iyad out of prison, until 1999 when I met Iyad. A totally young boy, from the shy, smiley boy to a leader.
Yeah.
And that was the prison created.
Sami, I'm going to read a part from the blurb, okay? And I want to ask you a question about the sentence, okay? This book confronts readers with the politics and complexities of armed resistance and the ethical tensions and contradictions that arise, as well as the disposition and suffocation of people living under the occupation of their ordinary lives in such times. Whether the story leaves readers discomforted, angry, or empowered, it will certainly emerge with a deeper understanding of the Palestinian predicament. Okay, my question is, as you were writing it, did you find yourself flip-flopping and sort of, flip-flopping around this predicament and these dilemmas? Or did you feel yourself firmly rooted on one side of whatever mountain that is and sort of drawing a map for people around? I mean, was this also a journey for you, saying, okay, now I thought I understood this, but clearly I don't. There are different sides to this, there are layers to this, and I might end up on one side or another of this ethical tension and these contradictions. I mean, yeah. Did you find yourself flipping around?
You ask difficult questions. And unprepped too. So on one hand, I'd say no. So it's a yes and no. No, I did not feel that like these are complex issues. When we talk about Palestinians and Israelis, I think it's pretty clear that the Zionist movement is a settler colonial movement. I have no flip-flopping on that. Israel is an apartheid state. There's no flip-flopping on that. Obviously these sound like slogans right now as I say them, but there's a lot of research that's been done on this, and human rights reports and whatnot, and all that. There isn't, in that sense, the question of Palestine is very clear. I don't think there is any sort of basis for any claim to rights that Jewish people would have to Palestine, and I think the Zionist movement creates a sense of this idea that you can return and so on. So that's on one hand, right? Like, what are the outlines and the framework of the question of Palestine? On the question of resistance, I think is where there's sort of like a back and forth. Is that how does one resist? Right? I do believe firmly, and I've always believed, that Palestinians have the right to resist with including armed resistance under international law, meaning you can take up arms, pick up weapons. You're not supposed to kill civilians. You're supposed to direct them and target combatant. Where I kind of went, back and forth is trying to understand, putting my mind in the mind of someone who does pick up arms, right? and then the sort of difficulties. And it's not like I'm not writing an article or a statement denouncing someone who's normalized, right? I'm taking up a weapon and killing someone. Those are two very different things, right? But I wanted to also reserve that judgment. Who am I to judge people? And this is where one goes back and forth, where like it's really a yes or no answer or right or wrong response, I think becomes much more difficult. That people have righteous or right causes, and we can sit here and pontificate and theorize about it all day long, and whether this is ethical or moral or whatnot. But when people are in the situation and picked up arms, then there are kinds of other questions before them. And so that's where I think I struggled with how to sort of then represent that on the page. How do you represent that on the page? And how do you put that together? Also I also struggled with trying to keep myself off the page and my my beliefs.
Yeah, that's kind of, Sami, what I'm trying to get to a little bit. It's not a question of like, I'm not asking about the technical challenge. How do I do this? And the discipline that an author has to exercise, which I think you did. How am I?
Yeah, I think that's
digesting this information as a process. I go through the layers of that decision tree and the emotional output
that was very difficult. Yeah, so that was very difficult. And earlier versions of this, there was much more sort of judgment or explanation. I'm an anthropologist at the end of the day, so like my desire or need to explain things was like I had to really disabuse myself of that. I know my wife, and reading the text, was like, you can't, you're not an anthropologist here. You need to be, if you want to write this book the way you want to, you're thinking of writing it, then you really need to let the reader come to conclusions. And so I had to kind of really disabuse myself, because there were things where like I didn't want you as the reader to draw a different conclusion than the one I had. And then I realized I can't do that, right? I need the reader has to do the work. And so I just need to tell the story. And some people will reach conclusions that maybe I don't agree with, but that's the nature of how life is too. People make decisions that some people agree with and some people don't. Some people will not like what he's done. Other people will give him a blank check. Other people will say, as I'm saying, that I'm not really, I don't know. So I think people, and that was very difficult, how to write in that way. And again, maybe, and on this, I just say that I hope what I did and we did was just to tell the story ultimately, so that you come to your conclusions, and that I sort of left that judgment off the page as much as possible, because I think I think that ultimately, when you read the story of a Palestinian family, when you understand the story of Palestinians and what they've gone through, you I think, should come to the same conclusion, in a sense, right? Without me telling you what those.
Yeah. Sireen, it's oftentimes when people write when there's a single member of a family who publishes a story that is about a big group of people, you inevitably have somebody else in the room saying, la, this is not what happened. This is not exactly what happened, right? Because there's, a million sides to the story. Did you get any pushback from other members of your family saying, Shahido, I disagree entirely?
Definitely. A lot of them, actually. It was not an easy to write. There is other stories I wanted to say. Actually, I ended up calling Sami, please remove it, because they will not agree that I mentioned them in those stories.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely. We're a big family. We're 13 of us. And each one do want to... So it's an Arabic culture things. When you want to tell certain stories, you're exposing them. For me, ask Sami, he did not want to write these things, and me, I want to write it. It's the opposite. Like he is, no, we should not put those stories out. And me, the good and the bad and the ugly, everything I want to tell people. Okay, so yeah, I get a lot of pushback from my mom itself, from my mom, a lot of my brother and sisters. Like, I did not get the okay from in so many stories. And in the same time, like you said, I did not. They believed like, okay, it was happening this way, not your way. But Sami was able to come and visit and listen to so many of those stories from their point of view or from their own view and own way, and then come to the conclusion, who I should say, Sireen or them. And there's a couple of stories, or many stories actually, it's them killing them, not just me. So yeah. And it's just, even for my mom until now, even the book is out, it's she's worried, what did I say? What did I tell? How much I told about the story? So yeah.
Yeah. Sireen, I mentioned this at the beginning. You're a teacher. You live in New Jersey.
Yes.
What has been the reaction of the community that you teach, the community that you're surrounded in since October 7th? Reaction to the book?
I don't want to just say my community now. I think, Sami, we mentioned it in the book. Being a Palestinian Muslim teacher is very tough, and maybe I changed careers just for my 3 children to be a mom around, and I think that one of the worst decisions I regret it till now, becoming a social study teacher. I lost a job because of that. After 3 years in one school, I lost a job because of a student posting that I'm Palestinian even. So
Wow.
ended up starting...
Like at a public school?
He wrote in his post. Yeah, he wrote in his... it's not even my students. I think he went to Israel for the birthright and somehow searched me and just came back first day of school and put a post on Facebook with a picture of my brother Iyad, and called me a few names, and ended up I lost my job in that school. They literally fired me when they found out a lot of stories about my brother and my life and who I am. And then I get a job in another school, and it's been 10 years in this school, and it's not easy to. It's not easy at all. I'm a teacher who the FBI came to interrogate me as a tourist. I am a teacher who the police was called in November because one student told his tutor that who I am, and then called the police and me that I'm a Palestinian Muslim. And after October 7, I'm a threat in the students. Like it's not been an easy. It's not been an easy at all. And we can go on and how much I've been facing in my career. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it's easy. Before we wrap up,
Sami keeps saying, sorry, I want to cut you off. Sami keeps saying we're in the honeymoon stage. And Sami, I wish we stay in the honeymoon stage because I am so scared. And the thing is, sometimes I say, I don't care. But in the end of the day, when you get the phone call or the email, this is happening, or so-and-so is doing this. And I've been getting a lot after October 7th. Like this is at least maybe 4 things happening in my district. And my heart will drop and I'll get stressed. And then I will say, it's fine. It's my story. It's the truth. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just telling it. And like Sami said, you take and get whatever you want and any perspective you want. But living in the United States has not been fair to me or even my children. My children who was born in New York and raised in the country, finished their college education in the country. My oldest son has been facing a lot of issues. Yeah. So it's not an easy step. So hopefully we'll stay in the honeymoon phase, like Sami said, and no more come out from the book, but I doubt it. Yes.
Because I think people haven't read it yet, or not a lot of people have read it yet. And so you're not going to get attacked for what's in the book. So, we went on a tour in the US, and one of our talks was canceled at Johns Hopkins, but it was for tweets that I made rather than the content of the book, right? And I imagine that there will be Zionist circles who may review the book and, in very sort of political terms and, attack it in that way. But then there's also the question of like the family and what's in the book. And I think, as Sireen was saying, there were times where I said, I don't think we should put that in. Because I felt that, she told me a lot, right, over the years, all sorts of stories about her family and just off the cuff stories. And I realized at one point that like my role here is not to expose the family. My role here is to tell the story of their lives. And there's a fine line between those two things, between exposing and just telling a story. And also, I didn't want to make anyone a hero, right? And of course, if you're working so closely with a family, there's a sense that maybe they want to come out as heroes, right? But that everyone has their faults. And a good, also if I want to tell a good story, then people have to be multidimensional. And of course, I don't want someone writing about me and exposing my faults. So these become very difficult. How the ethical question, my relationship and my I kept constantly wanting to make sure that I was doing right by the family. And of course, don't know if I've done that, and then how people will perceive it or want to try to create things that are, or read into things that are not there, and so on.
But as of now, like Sami said, coming after October 7, it's an educational piece for the people to realize it's not October 7. This book is talking about 1967. This talking about my father's family, 1948 in Nazareth. This is what's going on to the Palestinian in the 80s, in the 90s, 2000. It's not just October 7 and what happened on October 7. So it's a wake-up call for the people. Listen, the Palestinian struggle has been going on for the past 75 years. And like Sami said, the people who came in, like we had a book talk in Stanford, we have Santa Barbara, we have in San Francisco, we have Chicago, we have Pittsburgh, we have DC, we have Columbia University in New York. Everybody who was coming to those talks were book crew, every event was totally booked, is people who really care about the Palestinian struggle, people who really wanted to listen to more of story. And we got so many compliments. So in the end, I will look at the positive and I will ignore the negative comment, because as of now, being now talking to you from Qatar, it's a big accomplishment. Okay. And we're going to be in Kuwait next week. So that's the biggest accomplishment. And the more people read it, I think the more we'll understand that what's going on in Gaza is not something started yesterday. It's something started for the past 75 years.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I'm going to put you both on the spot. Do you have book recommendations, both as professors, teachers, educators, for students to check out in addition to your book about Palestine, or not?
I mean, I just heard about the Ahid Tamimi book. Sounded really great. Experience of a young woman, with the resistance and struggle. I mean, she's a hero. We know her since a young age, and now seeing her as an adult, and there is a book written about her. So that's a good one for Palestine. So I don't know, Sami, if you have lately heard about anything.
I've been reading science fiction lately, so it's been somewhere else. But on Palestine.
Okay, science
I think
fiction, great. Let's.
I've been reading
If you have-
Ministry of the Future, it's a science fiction book, but there's also, I think it's called 100 Years. It's a series. I'm forgetting what it's 100 Years After the Nakba or something like, which looks at sort of the future, mostly dystopian, I have to say. A couple of writers that I think sort of admire were Hala Aliyan, Isabella Hamad, and there's a nice book in translation called Time of White Horses by Ibrahim Nasrallah, that
Amazing.
I really like, that I remember reading while trying to write this book.
I read The Lemon Tree for Tulan, and I read The Children of the Stone. I love the story. And it's funny, I was crossing to the West Bank, to Palestine from the U.S. in the checkpoint in Jordan. And the book was written about this Palestinian musician, and he was there with me in Al Jisr right there. So I recognized him and I said hello. I saw Ramallah for Barghouti. I really liked. So those are the Palestinian stories I read, and it talks about experience similar to my experience.
The book is
Sorry, that book was called was Palestine plus 100.
Oh, Palestine is Basel. Okay.
amazing. Okay. So if you're listening to this, we'll put together a little blog post on Depicted with some of these book recommendations. And Sami and Sireen, if you have any other that you think of, please send them over. The book can be found everywhere books are found. It's called My Brother, My Land, A Story from Palestine. Sami Hermez, Sireen Sawalha, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And it's going to be available in Arabic by a year from now. So, inshallah. Yeah, thank you very much.
And see you in 2044 for the follow-up. 20 years. We need 20 years. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, both of you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.